There we go. Back to it.
So how's the alcohol-free beer journey coming on?
It's going well. I think the last time I had a drink was the 2nd of September. That was just one little beer.
Right.
Since then, not a drop of fermented beverage has passed my lips.
That's very good. I think that's probably about the same period of time since I last didn't have a drink. No, not girls and boys watching. That's not to advocate drinking lots, but holidays and friends' parties and so on tends to keep you well oiled. But this is, the old clear.
Well, yeah. In case anybody's wondering, this is
keep getting this from the local alcohol-free beer shop. Quite interesting.
Non-alcoholic beer, and it's actually very tasty. So.
It is.
So I feel pretty good actually.
Yeah.
Both,
well, Verity said she saw that on tap down in Bristol this weekend as well.
Okay.
I've not seen it on tap before. So when I think pubs start producing it as a viable alternative in a pub setting rather than just drinking at home setting, I think that could really change the culture of drinking and
well, I went to the pub with Mrs. Buckle last Friday night, and I just had non-alcoholic. They had cans on offer.
They had decent selection.
And they had decent selection. They had Clear Head. They had a couple of others. And I just had non-alcoholic beer. And I thought, I'm not missing out at all here.
No.
Not missing out. Got up, bright as a button, Saturday morning.
Yeah, smug. Well, I've got an experiment this afternoon because the same shop that sells all the alcohol-free beer sells an alcohol-free spirit. And it's not like one of these 0% tankeries, which is just a botanical flavoured water, effectively. It's got something in it which gives you a similar sort of relaxation effect as alcohol does, but there's no alcohol in it.
Right.
No. I suppose I should do some research first. What they put in instead. But they do say don't drive afterwards, even though there's no alcohol in the
Sounds
system.
safe.
I'll let you know next week.
Very good.
Good. So should we do this week's podcast?
Let's get on with it.
Okay, good. So, hello again and welcome to the SME Growth Podcast. I'm back. We let Richard have a session last week with a great interview, if you haven't seen it, with Andrea Miller, talking about the fallout from the Spanish football team World Cup win and all of the fiasco and controversy that followed that. So, you haven't watched it, it's a cracker. So, well done, Rich and Andrea, for recording that one. But we're back this week and Rich and I are back together again.
In terms of the podcast.
In the podcast sense. Yeah. Sorry, I wasn't giving a relationship update.
Just in case.
There's too much information.
Yeah.
I should now explain though, because for those of you listening in audio, you'll have noticed nothing different. But if you're watching the video of this podcast, or maybe you've seen the promo shorts of it on LinkedIn or Instagram, then something weird just happened. We had an alien and a robot setting up the podcast room instead of me and Rich doing it as usual. So that would have looked a bit weird. And then the gag is that here we are now as humans.
We're back.
Having
stuffed into our human form.
Our alien and robot real selves.
Men in Black style, isn't it?
So Rich, tell us what was all that about. You discovered the...
a couple of, I don't know how long it was, 12 months ago, there was a piece of software that came out called Wonder Studio. Mm-hmm. They were in beta at the time. And it looked quite cool. So you could film something... going for a run or in the office. And then with the magic of AI and other probably complicated technology, you can put an avatar on top of yourself and it matches your body movements pretty remarkably.
Wow.
And so we were talking about it the other day. We've got a new guy in the office who's into Arif, who's into all kind of 3D modeling and things like that. And so I said, hey, have you seen the software? And so we had a look at it and we had a little bit of a play and we thought, why don't we try and entertain
our podcast
audience with something, and then maybe have a chat about, well, is this just a bit of
what's it for?
Fun? Is it gimmicky? Does it actually help?
Yeah.
Will we all be making these kind of videos?
Well, I remember you showing it to me, as you say, maybe thick end of a year ago or 6 months ago at least. And it looked fantastic because clearly they're promo videos. You couldn't use it at that point. They were just releasing some example footage. And it looked incredible. The first time you'd ever seen it, to think that you're just filming people doing ordinary human type stuff in a video. And you turn them into whatever you want, aliens and robots and other characters. And now it's come out. You're right. So we've had a bit of a play with it. I suppose what it's doing, my sort of layman's understanding of it, is it's shortcutting the need for the sort of dressing up in a black suit with white dots all over it and having sophisticated software to map the human body's movements using what they call motion capture into something that's a 3D model on a software, and then overlaying some sort of avatar, 3D model. So they've cut out all of that using, as you say, AI. Very, very clever. And all you have to do is film it as normal and change yourself into an octopus or whatever you want to be.
So I thought it was an interesting experiment, to just try out some new tech. I think we'd always be advocates of that, to say,
try everything.
Wherever you are in your business, there's always new tools coming out, and give it a go. But then I suppose more kind of philosophically, where is the application for it? And as of yet, we've only done one little test video, and as we are talking, the guys are editing the videos, so we don't actually even know at the moment, as we speak, what is going to come out.
Which reminds me of the old days of photography, where you had to send your film off. Remember that? Your dad probably told you about it. You had to wait for weeks for it to come back in.
No, I used to develop my own black and white film.
Sorry. It's the kids out in the office. They won't understand.
They won't.
Wet film. Anyway, so you're right. We're waiting to see what the results are of this wacky harebrained scheme. I want to come back to that point you made as well, but later on in the show, about the trying new things. I think we've always got to try the new tech and coming out. And there's an interesting subject around the half-life of skills. So remind me on that near the end. We'll come back to that. But like you say, let's start this with having a bit of a discussion, which is following on from what you and I started chatting about in the office the other day. Because I think my reaction to it is slightly different to yours. It's fair to say. Maybe even more than slightly different. I don't know. And I don't know if I'm representative of a school of thought which maybe aligns with some of our client base, who are potentially sort of quite serious-minded about these sort of things, especially around the subject of marketing and promotions. And I love what it can do, this tool that you've talked about. But I'm still thinking about where the applications are. Is it just a great, fun piece of tool? And if I was filming a motion picture or just a little bit of student project and I could cheaply put an alien into the scene, that's great. Where do I use that in my marketing? And beyond the sort of thing we're doing now, I suppose, it's grab the attention. The first time anybody's seen it, you might get a few more clicks on your LinkedIn post because people are intrigued, not seen that sort of thing before. But a bit like when other tech first comes out, that soon becomes normal and it's no longer exciting and clever. So we can imagine companies around the country are going to be starting to use this tech for the first time. Maybe they'll do something around Christmas for it, or if it lasts then until April Fools, they'll do something around it. But has it got a more serious application beyond just having a bit of showing a bit jokey, dressing your MD up into an alien costume? Where's it go beyond that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a point there that I'd just say that you should be serious about your marketing, but that could be, I don't want to say have serious fun, like hey, let's all be wacky,
but seriously.
No, but you've got to take your marketing seriously. So this may not be for everybody. That's true, but I think where this helps, in my mind, and I'm still embryonic on this journey of thought at the moment.
Okay,
but I've been interested in storytelling. So there's a whole school of thought around narrative leadership, which is basically a posh way of saying tell stories to help manage people and lead them. Yeah. But it's around creating that story within your culture, within your business, and then using that. All humans love stories. That's why we like to read books. That's why we like to watch films, those sorts of things.
Right back to campfires and passing tales from generation to generation.
So it's sort of, it's in us in quite a deep way. So I think this potentially gives businesses an avenue to explore something that's a little bit more creative without having to have the CGI budget of a Hollywood blockbuster. Now, you've still got to, I'd caveat that by saying it's not point and shoot. So there's things that the guys are having to do to.
Well, we've already found that, haven't we? Just in the little dry run, we found a number of little things which they don't quite highlight in their promo videos of how easy it all looks and how great the polished output is. To get to whatever the guys out there are producing, we've had to accommodate how we've taken the shots, how we've lit it, how we've moved.
Yeah.
So there are some constraints. So it's not quite as simple as paying your reasonably small monthly fee for the software, filming something and bunging it through and getting what you want. Yeah. So it's not trivial. You're right.
So there is that element, and that's where I think there's a way, like anything, isn't it? You can have terrible CGI and amazing CGI, and there's a whole spectrum in between. So one of the first videos that we did yesterday, the robot was sitting in the middle of the table.
Yeah.
And so, okay, we've got to think about then how we film this and what the constraints that we've got. And
or work out how to mask areas.
And things like that. So there is a degree here of technical ability that has to go into it. But I think more importantly is getting people to think about, okay, so what is your brand story? Now, this isn't, again, not going to be this may not be applicable to every single business. Some businesses just do stuff and they just have to do stuff. But if you're thinking about, okay, so what are our brand values? What's our brand story? What kind of narrative do we want to communicate to our customers, to stakeholders? It starts just getting you thinking in that frame of mind. And this then just becomes a tool to say, how do we bring something in creatively into this? So it doesn't have to be a robot or an alien. They're just the ones they've got in at the moment. They have got other avatars, and you can also build your own and import them in. So you could have your own, if you've got, I don't know, like let's say you've got some animal mascot or something.
You can make your mascot
you could make your mascot come to life. You could have that in a video alongside the team.
I was thinking as well, maybe we had a client once that did these measurement arms, which you just take the arm, point it on your workpiece, and it would do all the measurements of the piece. Or just any other sort of robot, a pick and place robot. You could design that as your avatar, and then you use your physical arm in a camera shot, just say, right, I want to pick up, but save a hell of a lot of programming if all you had to do was to film yourself doing stuff, and then you turned your human arm into the measurement arm or the robot arm or whatever it may be. Now that's fairly specific, because I can see there being a fairly close correlation between the product, which we'll have to think of that, and something that you can do with the human body. But let's say you sold a piece of kit that it just looked like a fridge, it's just a stainless steel box that does stuff, but you wanted to come up with some sort of explainer video or even anthropomorphize that product to get it to explain itself. That'd be quite fun.
In my head now, I'm just thinking of, remember Clippy?
Oh yes,
from Microsoft.
Windows 2000.
Windows 2000. Clippy, who would help you do stuff.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, if that was the point is you're making, you can have any avatar as the skin to overlay. Yeah. All the clever bit is doing is turning a video of humans into the motion capture dots without needing all the clever software on the dots. It's done that for you. You still have to then apply the skin onto that, which it's helping you to do as well. And that's where I was when I was talking to you the other day in the office. Where can we bring this together? Because I'm excited by the potential, just like all the other things we see come and sometimes go. But I'm still at that very, very early stage of thinking, yes, but if I imagine the conversation now with some of my more cynical clients, perhaps, and that's no one listening, of course, it's the ones that don't listen that are more cynical. What would they be saying if I showed them this, or if they saw this podcast? Beyond, you guys are just mucking about in the office. What are you playing at?
Well, I think the obvious one is to come up with some sort of cheesy catch line with what you've got. So you've got whatever your product is,
it's out of this world,
or
knew you were going there,
or blasting off, or something like that, and then you're all standing there, avatar skin, dressed up as aliens. So there's that level of it. There's, again, like I said, it's not limited to those characters, so it could be anything. I think what we're trying to think about, I think I probably mentioned before on the podcast, whenever I think about content, I always think about, is it going to educate somebody? So is it going to offer them value? Is it going to entertain? And is it going to engage them? And I think
inform them, the Rithian values. Yeah.
So those sorts of things, these sorts of tools, I think, do have that ability to just be a bit more eye-catching. Now, yes, they will become ubiquitous in time, but then there'll be something else that comes out. So
I can see that, and that's where I suppose I phrased my question to you the other day. This will have at least a shelf life of 3-6 months or more, just like ChatGPT has, and other things that have come along that we've been able to do, because it'll be novel. the first time you've ever seen it. Remember that, what was that presentation software that allowed you to zoom
Prezi.
in? Prezi, yeah, that's it.
Just
Gives you headaches after a while.
sick.
But the first time that came out, everybody was doing Prezi presentations because it was just a blessed relief from the PowerPoint, death by PowerPoint thing. Something else came out. But now you hardly ever see it.
No.
To the point where the useful bits have actually been built into PowerPoint anyway. So this will have a life of 3 to 6 months as some of the more forward-thinking companies decide to use it in some clever way. They come up with some creative idea that it works for, and they'll deploy it, and it'll get attention, get eyeballs. For a while that's great. But imagine wind the clock forward 6 months, a year maybe, and it's just almost commonplace now that people's company videos shows avatars of whatever, their products, their robots, their aliens, wandering around and doing stuff. And everybody will say, oh yeah, they're using that software that does it. Yeah, very clever.
Yeah.
But seen that before, old hat. It's lost its shock value. So where does it have utility value once you've gone beyond shock
I don't
value?
know. Maybe I'd push back on that a little bit and think, well, does it, whilst ChatGPT has become a household name, how many people actually use ChatGPT really well in their business?
Yeah.
How many are really actually getting under the skin of it, prompting properly? Proper prompt engineer, even if that's a real thing, but they're earning 6-figure salaries.
Yeah.
Now, there's not many SMEs that are going to pay someone 6 figures to sit there and optimize their business with ChatGPT prompts.
No.
And so I think whilst it's very easy to say, write me a blog on blah, 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 and there you go. And there's some generic bit of information. Some of it's going to be out of date. Some of it's going to be worded in a way that just doesn't fit your tone. So again, you've got to train it and all these sorts of things. So I think whilst these things become in the popular domain, a bit like Excel, take another example. How many people really know how to use Excel? Most people use 2% of it, 3% of it.
Yeah.
And yet Excel's been around for ages.
Did you know 72% of statistics are made up on the spot?
I thought it was 83.
Proof then.
But so my point still stands, I think.
Yeah,
but I
not
think
many people use a lot of
not
Excel.
many people use a
It
lot
can
of
do a
these
lot
things.
more. So this could be, and maybe our challenge and talking to our clients and taking this to the next level is beyond the initial utility of 6 months, which is based more on novelty, shock value, if you like, just quirkiness, fun. It's upon us almost to help our clients to see this tech and others like it through a lens, which they do see as useful, and it isn't just novel.
Well, and I think as well, if it's a catalyst to change some of your thinking about things. So, okay, most people do the same old stuff with their marketing. Yeah. Same old. Okay, so try something different. Try something that maybe does grab attention a bit more. But I think it's back to that story thing. I think it's super powerful, and it is one of those things that can be put in the bucket of this is all fluffy, chuck it in there with the vision stuff and the values or whatever. But those are the things that underpin, like.
But there's some health warnings that come with this, then, like everything else AI-wise. But let's say your avatar was Joe Rogan. Okay, you were able to make him do or say.
Oh, that's already happening, though. That's already happening. I mean, the stuff. I mean, he must be spitting feathers over it, because some of the stuff now that you can see on Instagram or whatever of him saying things that he clearly would not say.
But I bet those, I don't know, I've not seen the ones you're referring to, but they're probably face to camera type stuff.
Yeah.
You can now make him 3D walking around a space, shaking hands with you in your office, being in your meeting. It's going to be much more convincing to see somebody, convincing in a not good way, I suppose, to see somebody actually in a 3D space interacting, but as another person. I could turn you into an authoritative figure giving testimony to something that person wouldn't say.
Point. So imagine now you've got an opening or a new product launch. Who do you want to turn up to it?
Yeah. You don't have to pay celebrity for endorsement anymore. You make them up.
Yeah.
So I think that's, some of that may be fun and with the right disclaimers on the screen and, no animals were harmed, no celebrities were used. You might have to do that and get away with it for a bit.
But I think the bigger picture on this is back to that story bit, and how does that influence? Because that goes beyond just making a video with some AI in it.
Yeah.
It goes to the very sort of core around what are we trying to do here? Yeah. What is our mission? What's our purpose? How are we supposed to interact with each other? What's our values? All these things, and it can pull that.
It's got to be consistent with your values.
So it's a way that it pulls it all together. Which I think longer term, I think when you look at companies that have a much better grip on that type of thing, they tend to, over the long term, be more successful.
Maybe I'm getting a bit carried away in one sense, in that whilst we like to think of ourselves a bit more in the vanguard of finding out about these new bits of tech, paying the sub, having a play, bleeding edge, they sometimes call it, you lose your money, you invest your money at the early stage, just seeing what it can do, and not everything turns out to be a winner. Then so if we're the early adopters, then there's the early majority that follow through, the followers, if you like. Then you get that middle rump of people who will do a bit of it. Now, I think for this tech, that's not going to be very big. There could well be a whole host of companies that have either got the attitude that they don't want to play with it, haven't got the skill set, or haven't got the ideas of how to play with it. So maybe there's me thinking, everybody will be using this in a year's time. That's probably not the case. Probably still down at a few percent of companies. Yeah. And maybe even once the initial flashes is gone and people realize that to pay for the fully featured version of this software, you're talking a few $100s a month, and your normal company isn't going to splash out that on just one piece of tech. If they're just using it for themselves, It's easy for us to do it because we're using it for lots of other people. So maybe actually it does have a longer shelf life because it won't become as ubiquitous as I feared.
I feel like we've discovered, you can do a quick video on your iPhone or any other phone that you may be using, and it still needs thinking through as to how you're going to do this. What's the angle? What's the shot? What's the storyboard? It's not a 5 minute. Let's grab some footage. A bit like that Reface app was that went around a couple of years ago, where you could just do a 5 minute. Hey, here's my face. What do I look like if I reface myself as any old celebrity or Iron Man or something?
Yeah, or make yourself older.
All those things. That was very accessible to people because everyone's got a smartphone. Everybody can do that. This takes a little bit more thinking about. If you're going to produce something,
the clever bit of tech they've done is move away from the head and shoulders shot, which is a bit easier to simulate, and that's why all those apps came out when they did. This is now creating something that exists in another space, and you've got to cope with all sorts of more computing power.
I think Steven Spielberg's behind it in some way, investor or been involved in steering it. So it's almost got that kind of, if you're trying to make a movie or you're trying to do something a bit more creative, which again isn't going to be for everybody. Not everybody needs that. But
so let me come back. You mentioned ChatGPT earlier as well, and another thought that was triggered when we were talking about this the other day with this is how long does it take before a piece of AI almost eats itself? So my concern, or some potential future reality, could be that with ChatGPT now being so good at writing articles by using its large language model on all the stuff it's been trained on, lots of companies are using it to write their blogs. And initially, that sort of is quite handy because you think, well, that's an efficiency saving. I can now write a blog in 5 minutes or 5 seconds compared to spending all day on it, and I can churn them out and blah, blah. But after a while, the value of having a blog with some even well-written content that's knowledgeable and authoritative on your website, no matter how good it is, even if you've human written it, that is going to be less valuable. Because if you want to understand, what's the principles of inbound marketing, at the moment you'd search for it, you might find the Wellmeadow site and you'd read our blog. Just go to ChatGPT and it'll give you a composite of everybody's views on it. So will even the value of blogs matter anymore? Is it just an SEO having keywords out there to be found? But what's the point of being found if people don't want to read it?
Well, I've heard recently someone talking about using ChatGPT for search. So to return company. So not only now do people have to think about, well, what's our SEO looking like in terms of Google searches, or search engine searches, you've got to think about, well, will I be thrown up as an answer in a ChatGPT search?
Yeah.
So, okay, who are the top companies in the UK for inbound marketing?
Yeah.
And then it's going to return a list of companies that it has evaluated.
Well, maybe we're moving on then to search 4.0 or whatever number we're at the moment. It started life just being which sites have got the keywords you've just typed in, and you had to be very prescriptive. Then it moved on to search your intent, so it started to work out what you really mean. And if you say pizza delivery near me, it could work all that stuff out and things. Maybe the next level of that might even move away from Google entirely, or at least it would use the ChatGPT, the Bard type of plugin for it. And instead of us all paying for adverts on Google for search rankings and adverts with it at the top of the rankings, we're paying to be in the ChatGPT results. Now that opens up a can of worms, doesn't it? That's like paying for an advert on Wikipedia. The point of it is not to have that.
And
influence.
If OpenAI are listening, you heard it here first, guys. Like, we want our cut.
Yeah. It's almost inevitable. I read an article, I think it was in the paper yesterday or today. There's 300 different scaled large language model companies. in the world at the moment. 40% Chinese, 50% American, 10% the rest. And barring a very few, they've got broken commercial models. But so did Google when it first started, right? And there were a few search engines out there. So clearly ChatGPT has its Plus subscription where it releases all its new stuff and stops the waiting and that sort of thing. And we pay for that because it's useful. But there's another 299 of them out there that we're not paying for. So where they're going to go? Some of them are just going to fizzle. Some of them will merge together. But some may adopt interesting commercial models to monetize what they're doing. And surely they're going to be tempted down the advertising route.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. Well, you got to pay the bill somehow, right? So
well, it's just getting the eyeballs. It's just like TV. You know, they put the adverts in between the stuff. You don't want to watch them, but you're there.
Yeah.
If people become accustomed to using ChatGPT or Bard or any one of the other 298 of them, then they're going to want to try and make some money out of the fact that you're there.
Well, I think it's still trying to find, in some ways, the killer apps. I mean, you see it on Instagram all the time. Everyone's trying to hawk their download our guide or buy our extension pack for ChatGPT to help you do this, that, and the other. Yeah. And there's probably a lot of scam out there. There are things where I think if you could link up some of the plugins, give me a recipe list for this week.
Yeah. Put it in my shopping basket, get it delivered.
Buy it, get delivered.
Yeah.
Now you can do that, but only in certain areas.
Yeah.
I think if it got to that point, I'd maybe think, okay, if I had to pay a certain amount a month to have that sort of tailored meal plan, all sorted, delivered to my house, that's a service.
Hang on, if you were prepared to pay that now, let's say ChatGPT and its ilk had never been invented, why didn't Google come up with a model or one of its competitors where it was ad-free and you paid a subscription to have it? It hasn't even got a voluntary. You know, I pay Wikipedia every year because I use it a lot, and only 2% of Wikipedia users do it. But I think I get value from that. I'm happy to pay it. Why wouldn't they have something a bit like public TV, you know, public service broadcasting in America?
Well, I suppose Google have sort of done it with YouTube, haven't they? So you can subscribe to YouTube and get rid of the ads.
So, but that hasn't come across the search, and that was my thinking as it ran on with this video software triggering the thought about ChatGPT and search generally, that if search becomes very different, because I'm not looking anymore, I'm not interested in finding out which company's got a good blog article on this subject I'm researching, I'm just going to go and ask ChatGPT, and it gives me the wisdom of a million different blogs that different people have written, and it very cleverly puts it together. Well,
the Chrome AI plugin is supposed to be quite powerful. I've not played with it, but it's I saw something yesterday on that, and they said that's starting to overtake ChatGPT.
Still a bit of a health warning though on ChatGPT. I've seen we've tried it, as you know, like lots of other tools, and we maybe sometimes get it to summarize these podcasts, and it does a very good job superficially. It's well written. It picks out key points that are summarizable, but it misses the main point because it doesn't know. It can't judge quality, can it? It knows that this was talked about a lot, so I'll summarize it. But like last week, you were talking with Andrew about plans for Christmas and around the ethics of running Christmas parties. And it picked up on the wrong bit of the subject, just the fact that I wasn't here so you could talk about Christmas. Well, that's not really very newsworthy, but there was a really serious point in there, which we would have liked to summarize, which is, you know, managers need to think about their role model being a leader in an organization and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, so you do have to. And you know, speaking of health warnings on this type of stuff, I did hear the other day that Arnold Schwarzenegger is apparently making another Terminator film where it's open AI that he's now I don't know if this is true, so I'm going to caveat it with that. I only heard it, but I'm going to investigate because he has been warning us about this for years. Terminator 1, Terminator 2, all the rest of the Terminator series. He's told us, don't play around with this stuff.
I know, he foresaw it.
Look what can happen.
Yeah.
But we, you know, carried on. I'm trying to find an Arnie-ism now that I can use, you know. But we stuck around. And now he's telling us to get to the chopper. So
we can edit something in, don't we?
So I thought it's interesting now that it's even becoming, you know, kind of
what's the phrase? Reality imitating art, or art becomes reality or something. But that's where we're going with it. I did say I wanted to come back on this concept of the half-life of skills. We subscribe to the Harvard Business Review, which is fascinating. And the other point I wanted to say about that, just while we're there, is the images that it uses in that magazine are fantastic. They're all done by artists. And if you're thinking about images to accompany your blog posts or put on your website, just think about this approach for a minute. They don't try and overtly link the image to the subject of the article, deliberately. They have a very tenuous link, which they have to actually describe. It's that tenuous. But they use really top quality art, original art, and they put that. And I think their attitude is that to draw you into an article, that's what the image is for. And quite often that image doesn't have to actually relate to it. It draws you in. A bit like when you see the billboards that haven't got an advert on them at the moment. They just put a big picture of a baby's face on it because it drags your attention in, and then it just says, rent this space, got your attention, haha. So anyway, that's a bit about the pictures in the Harvard Business Review. But the article was around the half-life of skills. And if you think back a long time, half-life of skills was beyond the working life of a human. So if you learned to be a plumber, fine, you got a lifetime of plumbing ahead of you, or a solicitor and so on. Certainly in the knowledge industries now, that half-life is coming down to less than 5 years, and in some instances 2.5. So if you're in some coding areas now, you've got to be really at the forefront. Otherwise, what you are paid to do today will be automatically done for you by AI or something in very short order. So if the half-life of skills has come down to considerably less than a career length, businesses have to think a lot more about retraining their people.
Yeah.
Now, the article is really good analysis on this. It says if you're going to retrain people, you've got to know what skills you need and how the skills people have match up to the jobs that they need to do. So you need to start out with a list of skills. Well, apparently the World Economic Forum have done one, and HSBC have adopted their skills list. 7,000 skills have been discreetly identified in there, and the bank HSBC use that list to work out what skills each of their employees have got and how that matches up and what they do. And then, of course, you have a gap analysis. You say, well, that set of skills was great last year, but we don't need them anymore. We now need this new set. We have to retrain you in these new skills. And as they point out, not everybody is well suited to having new skills trained in them.
Yeah.
They have to have the motivation to do it. They have to have some innate ability.
Yeah.
And they have to have the right personality. And it opens up that topic quite a lot in the HBR this quarter. So I was fascinated by that if all of our businesses are going to be accelerating in terms of need of change of skill base, then all of our employees and us as leaders have got one hell of a challenge. This will all be driven by AI, which is what's accelerating this reduction in the half-life. We've got to somehow work out not what people come to the job with to start with. Their education is less and less important. Their experience is, important to a point, but becoming less so.
Yeah.
It's more about not even what skills they have, but how quick they are at adapting new skills.
Yeah.
And if they're not very good at picking up that next thing, then whilst they may be a great employee on day one, slightly less so on their first anniversary, slightly less so on their second, and very soon, they need to go and work somewhere else. So it's a really sobering thought that we're not just creating tools that make us more efficient, but they're going to drive a whole new pace of change.
Yeah. And I guess I was thinking about this something similar the other day when I was showing my lad the test video we made of this AI software, and I was I think in the office we were all sort of reasonably impressed by it. There's a video of yourself and me walking through somewhere, and it'd been changed into this robot, and I was like, well, this is amazing. And I showed it to him. He's 11, just 11. He said, you just use some AI to put a thing over something. And it just not impressed at all. Not impressed at all.
Yeah.
And this is really interesting when I contrast that to, say, 5-6 years ago when I went over to my granddad had bought himself a Nintendo Wii to practice his golf. Right?
Right, okay.
But he hadn't plugged it in properly, so there was a SCART lead, back in the day there, and it was all black and white and wavy. But he was still playing it because he thought that was still amazing. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And I said, Grandad, you got that all wrong there. You need to. So I went around the back, put it in, bright colours, vibrant thing, and he was just absolutely, because you've absolutely blown me away with this. This is amazing. And at that point, I was thinking, you didn't actually think that was how it was supposed to be, but that's what he did. Yeah. That was his expectation of it. So I look at that compared to in 2 generations, and you've got 11.
Well, and I think that circling back to where we started this, is this just playing around with this video software or not? I think you're right. There's going to be a very wide range of reactions when people see it, through to those that know how it's done. They know the magic trick. They're not impressed by the magician, and it doesn't even have any effect at all. It's not even going to catch their attention to read the article underneath. Right through to the other end, where they're absolutely blown away by it. How did you? I must have spent hours. What sort of budget did you? And all that sort of thing. So you're right. We've got to pitch this appropriately. Never has it been more important. Understand your buyer persona and what their expectations are and how they react to this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So do do we now have to go back into that alien and robot thing again? Finish the story off. So I don't think we've got the energy for that.
No, well, we have to see how it all's come out.
We'll pretend that we'll get back into our alien alter egos after the podcast
is finished. Yeah, it's like one of those films, isn't it, where they run out of budget, so they've just got to what happens next? Show the back of someone.
And for those of you that haven't watched either the video of this podcast or the promo clips of it, none of that will make sense at all.
But do go and check it out on LinkedIn.
Go and check it out
or
on LinkedIn,
the website.
Or Instagram. Yeah, it's even that. Good. Cool. Well, thanks a lot. Good chat. Good extension of what we were talking about in the office the other day, and no doubt we'll come back to this subject. Good. Thank you again for listening to and perhaps watching, hopefully especially this week, our SME Growth podcast from Wellmeadow. We produce these every week, trying to pick a new topic that might be interested to SME businesses in particular who are looking to grow. As ever, we ask you to pass on the word of what we're doing. You can do that by following us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Amazon or wherever else you get your podcasts from. Click the little bell so you get notified when our next episode drops, or just do the old-fashioned thing and drop an email or pick up the phone and tell a mate that we're doing it. It's all we're enjoying doing them, and we're getting some great feedback, so please pass them on. In the meantime, good luck with your business.